Bring up what you want there. I think it's pretty much ready.
I'm going to use this so I don't put anybody to sleep. Doors are locked, Scott. All right, I'm here today to tell you about the benefits of Amway. Here's the disclaimer. I'm going to be doing some market projections and talk a lot about technical, fundamental analysis, a lot about the January crop report. This basically says no matter how wrong I am, I can't be sued. So took the time to read that. Quickly, I'm going to go through a little background on INTL FCStone and myself. INTL FCStone is a commodity risk management firm. We are global. We have 1,000 employees currently. Some of you probably remember Farmers Commodities Corporations. That's the company that I started with in 1998. And obviously, when I started, there were 90 employees. Now there's 1,000, 30 global offices. We work with about 10,000 commercial customers and about 100 countries worldwide. Our customer base is almost all commercial. We're all hedgers. We're all trying to take a risk that we have and pass it on to an exchange or to a counterparty or something like that. And that's what our role is assisting our customers in doing that. Myself, I'm a grain risk management consultant. I work with commercial grain merchandisers and end users primarily on margin-based hedging programs. I'm a graduate of Iowa State. I live in West Des Moines. I'm married with 2 kids, and I have 14 years of industry experience. I know most of you that don't know me probably think that means I started when I was 12, but that's not the case. I'm also proud to say that for all of those 14 years I've worked with Pro Co-op. It was one of my first customers, and I'm excited to be able to be here today and be able to come up here at least annually and see some familiar faces, and it's really good to kind of get up in this area. It's a lot of good people here, so I'm glad to be here today. So here's our agenda. First I want to go over the January crop report. It's pretty topical, it's a hot issue. There's obviously been a fallout from that. So I'm going to start with that, do a quick recap, and then take a step back and do a 30,000 foot level view of the overall global and U.S. supply and demand situation. Then I want to talk about some more of the hot issues that are currently affecting the market, some of the demand trends we've seen, then go into 2012, 2013, and finally finish up with questions. Now, it's hard for me to see a little bit, but if you happen to have a question, you can stop me. If it's on a slide, it's easier to answer those questions while the slide's up. So feel free to get my attention somehow. Short of throwing something, that'd be fine, but that'd be great. So first up, and I'm going to apologize in advance, these numbers are probably going to be a little hard to read. There aren't many slides that look like this, but this one is one that unfortunately is going to turn out a little smaller than what I hoped. So for people in the back, the bottom line is let's get used to looking at, this is 2009's balance sheet. This is 2010's balance sheet. This is what the 2011 balance sheet looked like in December, and this is what it looked like in January. The bottom line, what I want to look at is the difference between December and January for the time being. And if you look at what 2011, 2012 balance sheet did, we actually ended up with a carryout almost identical to what we saw in December. You can see carryout changed by only 2 million bushels. Now that is still a very tight carryout. 846 million bushels is still very snug. It's one of the tightest in history. But the problem was the market came in thinking that we were going to see 750 million bushels. So it was looking for a much tighter situation domestically, and it didn't pan out that way. And that's why you saw some of the reaction we saw following the report. Also, let's take a look on the right side is world corn supply and demand, and the highlights there is that, we'll get into this later, but Argentina has had a major crop problem this year, and it's still an ongoing issue. So we're constantly watching that. Despite that, the USDA did address that to some extent in the January crop report. They lowered production by 3 million tons, which is noted down here. So they changed Argentine corn production by 3 million tons. Despite that, corn stocks actually went up by 1 million tons. It went from 127 million tons up to 128. So again, despite the low, some address of the Argentine situation, we saw increases in former Soviet Union, we saw increases in Europe, we saw increases in that area of the world offset the current projected losses in Argentina. Now the market thinks that's going to change still. I would certainly expect that 128 million ton number to contract a little bit going forward, but for the time being, this was just not a real friendly number from the market. The other thing was we had December 1 corn stocks, and that's a quarterly estimate that the government puts out that increasingly gets more confusing on how exactly they're coming up with these numbers. But it came in 250 million bushels above market prices. And you think about that, in one quarter's balance sheet, 1/4 of the market year, we were 250 million bushels off. That's a big time change versus expectations. All these things kind of went together to form one of the more bearish reports we've seen in a while. Now I'll get into some bigger text here for you. One of the reasons I showed the U.S. balance sheet, it still showed a very snug overall supply and demand picture. Despite it being 848 million bushel carryout above market expectations, it still is rather snug. One of the reasons why I saw such a big fall, essentially almost 60 cents lower in 2 days following last Thursday's crop report. One of the reasons for that is really market structure going into the report. This blue shaded area represents the net speculative long position in the market. The black line shows price. So you can see heading into late December of this year and into January that we were talking about an incredible amount of fund money. Almost 100,000 contracts were bought in about 2 weeks heading into this report. Prices rallied about 75 cents a bushel accordingly. What's also you should know about this is that this last January report was the 6th straight year that has featured a limit move following the report. So if you think about that, the market was knowing that we were going to see something drastic happen after that crop report. So the market came in long. Prices rallied, thinking that there's a limit move almost every year in the January crop report. And guess what? They were right. There was a limit move, but it didn't go in the direction they were betting on. So they were fully invested in something going higher, and that did not happen. This is a chart I like to show, which is open interest, which is the red line that kind of goes in that wave formation there. Open interest represents total open contracts on the Chicago Board of Trade. For every long, there's a short, but those two trades represent an open interest. The bottom line is the more, I would say, for lack of a better term, the more interesting the market, the more volatile, the more stuff going on, the higher the open interest. And you can see what started to happen in late December. We started to realize that stuff in Argentina was bad, and we started to realize that we had a limit move probably coming at us in January. So the funds started building a position, open interest started to skyrocket again, the rug got pulled out from underneath them in that report, and we saw an incredible 60-cent move in 2 days as these weak longs got out of the market. I call them weak longs because when they bought at 625 and the market goes to 660, they're not in it for that 35 cents. They're in it for $1.35. They're in it for an $8 move. And when the market came out and said, or the USDA came out and said, we're not going to see that $8 this year probably, based on what we know today, they got out in a hurry. And that's where we started to see that panic liquidation.